in the restaurant business, everyone's a competitor. In the escape room business, the only competitor is a bad escape room. Like, people aren't playing it twice. So the only thing that's bad is someone tries it for the first time and it was a bad experience and they don't come back. But otherwise, if they go across the street to a great independent who's running a great game and they have a good experience, they're going to make their way to us. So we're hugely supportive of the entire industry.
This episode of the Attraction Pros podcast is brought to you by our friend Eric Fluet at Get It Done Marketing.
With 30 years of experience in the attractions industry, Get It Done Marketing offers freelance marketing insight, strategy, and execution at a fraction of the cost of a full-time hire.
Partnering with over 30 parks and resorts, from family water parks to large multi-location organizations, Get It Done Marketing fills leadership voids on property, and corporate marketing teams assists with resource allocation and supports emerging marketing professionals.
Learn more at getitdonemarketing.com. Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hey, Matt, I'm doing great. How are you?
I am fantastic.
Better be.
Yes, I am.
Recording a podcast.
Why not? Question for you.
All right.
Have you ever been locked in a room that you could not get out of?
Locked in a room that there was, no, I don't think so. What about you?
Luckily, no, I have not. But that's kind of the topic of our conversation today with Burton Heiss.
Yes.
Oh, you have been?
When I was 12 years old, I was traveling. I was on a road trip throughout Israel, and I stopped at a bathroom and was using like an outhouse. And the locks there, they have like a double lock. And so I did like you turn it twice to lock it. And then when I was done, I turned it once, not realizing that I had turned it twice previously. And it took me about longer than I expected.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just brought up
That's okay. That's okay.
It was a frightening moment for me, as I was by myself.
I'm sure.
In the car, yeah.
Well, maybe that's a new version of the game that Burton can use. Burton being the CEO of Escapology, right? Get locked in the outhouse. But he talks a lot about the fact that, from an escape room perspective, one of the worries, one of the fears from people who have never done it before is like actually getting locked into a room. Is this what's going to happen in there? And they have to work kind of against that to get their message out about, no, this is just an immersive entertainment experience, not getting locked into an outhouse.
Yeah, exactly. Not like that situation. Yeah. We cover so many amazing topics of this. Burton has been CEO of Escapology for about 3 years, but he is not from the escape room business. But frankly, no one is really from escape room business, but he's not from the attractions industry either. He came from restaurants, and he talked about the importance of really representing a brand-led business, and gets to share his mindset on that, being the comparison being commodity driven. So something where we can be very proud of the brand that we represent on a daily, regular basis.
Absolutely. And then he also goes pretty deep into the experience of the escape room. And one of the things I really appreciated him talking about was the fact that they want people to disconnect to reconnect, disconnect from their electronic devices and reconnect with the family and friends that they're going through the escape room experience with.
And then lastly, he gives us a little bit of a glimpse into the future. What do escape rooms look like, going forward, as far as how the puzzle and the game actually fits into the overarching experience, the theming and the storyline behind it, and the overall level of immersion. And I gotta say, I'm pretty excited.
Are you excited to try to escape from this intro to get into the interview with Burton?
I would say let's lock ourselves right into this podcast Zoom room to interview Burton Heiss.
Here we go. Hey, Burton, welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. How you doing today?
I'm great. I'm fantastic. How are you guys?
We're great. So excited to have this conversation with you. Can we kind of start at the beginning and talk a little bit about your career to this point and what you do with Escapology?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll maybe start a little bit backwards. My name's Burton Heiss. I'm the CEO of Escapology, and I think it's fairly well known from those around me. They know I'm not actually from the escape room business, although the escape room business is only 10 years old, so nobody is from there. But not even from the attractions industry. My whole career it was really based in the restaurant industry. My grandfather was in hospitality. He had hotels. My father had restaurants. So that's where I got started. I went away to school. I got a degree in organizational communication, never had any dream of going into the restaurant business. I had a front row seat for how hard that was, how much work went into it. But you graduate and you're like, what do I have the opportunity to do? And turns out, what are you pretty good at? And that became the restaurant business. Interestingly, the restaurant business is really an apprenticeship type industry. So it really does allow for people to rise up if you're good at what you do. So yeah, I spent my entire career in the restaurant business. I had executive roles with brands like Baja Fresh, Wagamama, and Pizza. Was CEO of Nando's Peri Peri and Buddy's Pizza. And if you kind of look at my career, one of the things that was, I think, a common thread was they were all really brand-led businesses. You can think of some businesses that are more commodity driven. All the business I was, I think, lucky to join were really brand led, and they were all high growth operations. So that really came to define, I think, my career in the restaurant business was high growth, brand led businesses. And I think it's turned out that's what I'm really drawn to as well, which we'll obviously be talking a lot about Escapology, but absolutely dovetailed ideally with Escapology, which is a really strong brand, really led by that brand, and we're obviously in sort of enormous growth mode.
Burton, can we unpack this a little bit more, the concept of a brand-led company versus commodity-driven, and what examples of kind of each of those might be and how they differ?
Yeah, the way I kind of always used to say it was, I always want to work someplace where when I get on the airplane, I don't put a piece of paper in my pocket to cover up the logo. Like, I'm excited to have someone see the logo and them have a reaction to it. And so I kind of think of it in the consumer's eyes. Is it a brand that people react to, that they're like, oh, could be positive or negative, right? Tesla, that's seen probably both sides of that, but something that the brand. I think of something maybe you buy on Amazon that is manufactured that I don't know what brand it is. I've got some pens here on my desk. I don't know what the name is on the label. So it's probably kind of thinking it in terms of, are you buying a pair of Nikes or On Clouds, or are you buying just a pair of shoes to get from point A to point B? And that's sort of the difference for me. I find from a leadership perspective, the brand led can be more complicated. There's maybe more moving pieces because that brand is living in the consumer's brain. It's living in their head, how they respond to you. But man, is it easier to lead a team, to get buy-in, to get people excited about, maybe to use an example, it's the local carnival versus Disney. One's got this brand, one's more of hey, it's entertainment, it's great, but it's more of a commodity.
So Burton, I'm wondering, it makes total sense. And I'm wondering if we can go even a little deeper, because you said from a brand perspective, it makes it that much easier to lead the team and get them excited and things like that. So I'm wondering if we can kind of dive into how you go about doing that, getting them excited about the brand so that when they walk on a plane, they're excited about the brand that's on their shirt too.
I don't know, I don't know how other people do it. For me, if I believe in the brand, I think it's that lead from the front. If I'm excited, if I'm passionate, and again, I think it's much easier to be passionate about that brand that stands for something versus just a commodity. I think it permeates the entire organization. I think oftentimes leaders, we all know that we set the tone, that you set the sort of pace, but I think sometimes we underestimate how much our enthusiasm, how contagious that can be, and how much people will follow that. So really, I don't know that I've got a deep, dark secret in how you do it. I think it's got to be something that is within you and that you believe in, and that will, if it's genuine, it will permeate the entire organization.
Mm.
So, Burton, you talk about your background not being from the attractions industry, not being from the escape room industry, but like you said, who actually is from the escape room industry, but being from the restaurant industry and then making that transition into whether we want to call it escape rooms or even just the overarching umbrella of attractions or out-of-home entertainment. Curious as far as what that transition was like for you.
It was actually, I don't want to say it was easy because on the business side, there was a lot that needed to be done. But I think there was, the first thing I think of is it was inspiring. It's really rare in life, especially as you get a little further on in your career and in the experience, to really experience something new, something that you can be genuinely curious about, that you don't know. I feel like there's so many things that you're just sort of repackaging and doing the same thing, especially in leadership. So it was really exciting to be in a situation where this was all brand new. It was genuine questions like, how does this work? How do we do this? Some of them weren't great answers. I can remember sitting in the office, it was maybe 30 days in, and I was starting to get our growth strategy together. And I asked one of the guys in the office, was like, hey, when can we get the next Scooby-Doo escape game? And they looked at me and they were like, oh, no, we don't have any games. I was like, we're an escape room company. What do you mean we don't have games? And it was truly that we were pivoting from a DIY situation to a manufactured, and we didn't have escape games. That blew my mind that we didn't know how to build escape rooms. So, there was quite a bit to learn, but it was really inspiring. And I thought reinvigorating to just be doing something completely new and in a different world. I also, though, another way that was maybe inspiring is, I think in the restaurant business, I don't want to say I was jaded, but, a lot of the conversation can be around negative experiences. I mean, Josh, you're all about sort of the guest experience. Restaurants, it's so often about the complaint, right? It's so often about what went wrong and planning and managing for that. In the escape room industry, it's about people's sheer passion and joy for having just had this experience. And it actually reminded me a lot, and I might have shared this with you previously. A long time ago, previous lifetime, was a scuba diving instructor. And it really, escape rooms remind me of when we would do that first open water certification dive. I've done it 1,000 times, but when you came up, your students and just experiencing it for the first time, and this amazement and awe and genuine excitement on their face, really, like, I enjoyed it as much as they did. That's the same thing you see when someone comes out of an escape room. And I think that makes the business quite interesting. So I found those things inspirational. Otherwise, frankly, leadership is leadership. I often said, I listed you some of the places I worked. I did burritos, I did tacos, I did chicken, I did pizza, all these different things. I always said it doesn't really matter what the widget is. It's still about leadership. It's about people. It's about finance. It's about real estate. It's about strategy, planning, budgeting. All those things really apply to whatever business you're running. If you can learn what the business is. And I think oftentimes people maybe rely too much on being a subject matter expert for their credibility, for their, hey, I'm the boss because I know the most. That's a pretty bad place to be, in my opinion. First of all, anytime you think you know the most, that's the first thing you don't know. There's not a chance you know the most. So coming in, knowing I didn't know the most, set me up for success. And then saying, hey, I'm going to apply what I know is good leadership to the business. Was sort of how I approached it. So I think it was a pretty easy and pretty successful transition right away.
So Burton, I'm curious to kind of take that again to the next level, is thinking about people who might be in an executive role who are feeling like maybe I'm not being challenged, or maybe I do feel like I'm the smartest person in the room because I've done this for so long. Is that a signal for them to maybe look for something else?
It could be. I certainly think it was a great move for me. I think I was prepared for it to fail because I think we do oftentimes we just we're where we are. We've been successful. Why mess with success? I would say I probably lean a little bit the other way, that Matt, that it's not so much maybe it's time to change, but that it's certainly worth looking at. Am I, you might not have to change, but I wouldn't be afraid to change. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say. I certainly, if you're thinking about that pivot, I would not be afraid of that at all. I've found it to be, like I said, reinvigorating, super interesting, and I've learned a ton. And I don't know that you get that same opportunity if you keep doing the same thing. So I wouldn't say it means you have to change, but I sure as heck wouldn't be afraid of making that change or that pivot.
So what would you say then? It's been a few years now since you've been
just over
years.
three. March 7th was 3 years.
There you go. Happy belated 3-year anniversary with the company. What have those 3 years been like? What have maybe some of the biggest initiatives, maybe even some of kind of the learning moments for you entering the industry, and how you've really been able to convert those into forward momentum?
Well, the biggest piece right away was creating a strategy. We were moving from founder led. I know you've had Simon Davison on the podcast in the past. He was the founder. I'm the first to say I'm not a founder. I get all the time that people see me as entrepreneurial, and I'm like, I'm actually really not. I much prefer to use someone else's checkbook. I like the corporate design, the org design. I like the strategy stuff. I don't think I'm the dream something up from nothing and make it into something. That was what Simon did. But in the same way that I can't do that, there's this piece of we had to professionalize the business. I think it's amazing how big it got. But the time was, okay, we've now got to start to put some more structure in place that allows us to move forward. So the biggest piece was coming up with the strategy. And I think there was a few pivots we made, pretty big ones, actually. So you can kind of think of our organization. We have 3 different elements. We have our franchising. We're a franchisor. That's the biggest piece of our business. But we also have some corporate ops. We own and build some corporate locations. And at the time we didn't have this, we have manufacturing. When Escapology started, all of our games were DIY. You sign up as a franchisee. We gave you a manual on how to build the games. You went off and built them. We answered the phone when you needed help and kind of gave you some guidance. A lot, especially post-COVID, technology, our licensing agreements, a lot of things have led us to start to manufacture more games, as has the franchisee that's coming in. There is a limited number of people out there that have the wherewithal and the skill set to say, I'm going to go build my own venue and build 6 escape rooms in it. So we needed to make that pivot and add some manufacturing capacity to it. As well, we really went out and built a corporate program. So when I joined, we had 3 corporate locations. We now have 14. 3 years later, we have another 13 in development. Really 3 reasons we did that. One was to create the program, and I mean this on a real estate and a construction standpoint. The old real estate model for escape rooms was find a decent market, go down the road, find a dodgy strip center with a vape shop and a Domino's, and you put in an escape room. And the enthusiasts are going to go there. What I realized quickly was, yeah, but only 25% of Americans have tried one. I know I had looked at some of those and said, that's where my emo niece goes. I'm not taking the family there, right? So we thought there was a mainstream real estate play here, but that means bigger rent. You're going to Main Street and Main Street. How do we prove that model? We had to go out and build that. How do we prove the model where you're putting in all of the newest games? What does that look like? We had to go prove that. And the third reason was really, I'll be honest, was EBITDA. I needed to build a executive team, needed to build that manufacturing arm of the business, and we have a really solid model. So opening up some corporate locations was a very quick way to get the funds to make those investments. So that was really Josh, the first thing was creating the strategy. And probably the biggest piece of what I feel like, I've kind of come in and provided. The rest was then building the team and executing on that strategy, to be honest.
So Burton, you mentioned that 25% of people have tried an escape room. Is that a current stat, or was that something back when you were doing this?
I think it's still in the 25-30%. That's definitely anecdata. Like, I don't know exactly what the number is, but last I heard it's around a third, around 30%, somewhere between a quarter and a third is still the consistent statistic.
Okay. And so that begs the question, thinking about your strategy, you certainly probably want to make that pie bigger, right? As far as people that have tried them. So what is then the kind of the external strategy for people who, may not have considered an escape room before, or like this is not the kind of entertainment that they think they want, but
Right.
maybe it is, they just don't know it yet.
Yeah, I think the first thing, Matt, is that real estate strategy. I think, again, if you drive by and you see the blacked out windows next to the vape shop and the Domino's, you're like, maybe. Whereas if you're walking through the mall on a Saturday evening, you're going to, thinking some of our co-tenants, Yard House to have dinner, and you're going to do a little shopping, and there you see an Escapology. We have, a nice looking lobby. You might be able to ask some questions. We have our game posters in the windows. We think it makes it a lot more approachable so that someone isn't just driving by and seeing it, but can actually interact with it. The other piece, and I know you guys are aware, that we have some licensed IP. You have games like Scooby-Doo, and the Spooky Castle Adventure, or Batman. That's again another way to broaden our appeal to folks that maybe haven't tried. At least make it a lower barrier to trial, that you don't really need to know what you're doing. Scooby will disarm anyone who's nervous about playing an escape room.
So when kind of looking at this, I would say strategic shift and kind of like you said, the main street and leveraging IP and kind of the actual like locations themselves, has that not only helped to maybe increase that 25% number, but also does that alter the demographic of the consumer as well?
Yeah, 100%. I think there's a misconception. And it may not be a misconception. I can certainly tell you our demographic is not exclusively, teens and corporate functions. Like that is a small piece. Most of ours is multi-generational. Yes, we do a lot of kids' birthday parties. We do a lot of corporate team builds, but mostly it's Friday and Saturday date night or friends going out to do something different. One of the things that really drives the escape room industry, and why I think it's here's an interesting thing I was thinking about. We have escape rooms that are either standalone, or in some cases they're in FECs or LBEs. I don't know which is the current acronym we're supposed to use. In almost every case, the standalones perform better. So for some reason, escape rooms aren't quite as good an add-on as, duck pin bowling or whatever, or an arcade or whatever else might go in that FEC. And I think some of that is that ongoing demand that's out in society right now, which is, man, can we just put our phones down for a couple minutes and do something together? And we call it disconnect to reconnect. I think what escape rooms offer you the opportunity is disconnect from your device and reconnect with your friends and family. You're using your brain, you're solving puzzles, you're engaging and communicating, doing critical thinking. You end up feeling really good about that. I mean, you might be a little worn out with a little bit of the adrenaline rush, but you end up feeling really good about that. And I think that demand will continue to propel the industry.
So Burton, I know you mentioned IP a little bit, and you talked about Scooby-Doo and Batman and that type of thing. Can you maybe dive a little deeper into how important it is to have that IP, and even to Josh's point about demographics, how that can, change your demographic and change the business a little bit?
I think that was actually Josh's question. I just didn't answer it.
Oh,
But I appreciate you bringing me back on point. I don't know how important IP would be in general, um, certainly to other businesses, but I can tell you to Escapology, whether by the skill, and I'm going to give credit to Simon with most of this, or the luck. It's been a big deal for us. It's like you said, having something like Scooby-Doo or Batman clearly is going to bring in a different demographic in terms of maybe people who are just enthusiastic about those brands. But mostly, I think it's, again, maybe a family, or maybe it's an older couple that really just was always intimidated by the thoughts of an escape room. And I can speak to that because I was always intimidated. Like, don't I have to know what it is before I've tried it? And then you find out it's this immersive themed experience where you solve some puzzles, no different than sitting down and doing a crossword puzzle, to be honest, but with so much more excitement and the immersion, that, yeah, it's definitely broadened the approachability. And I would think the demographic, I don't know that we have research that says that or data that says that, but you would certainly put two and two together, and common sense tells you it's broadened that demo.
Hmm.
Burton, can you explain a little more of why people might be intimidated by an escape room?
I can only say why I was. And I think at some point you say, hey, only 25 to 30% of Americans have even tried one. I think part of it is what we've already talked about. I think some of it was the way it's been expressed, the way it's been presented. So if you're positioning yourself in a strip mall, boarded up, looking a little spooky and scary, the only people that have done it are, the teen goth neighbors. And we don't have anything out there that gives you a clue as to what's inside. If you think about, like, I know what's inside a bowling alley. I can figure it out. I know what's inside an arcade. I can even kind of guess what's inside a haunted house. I'm just thinking of, or a theme park. Most people don't know, what am I getting into? We still get questions of, am I going to be locked in? Am I going to be handcuffed? Am I going to be blindfolded? And it's the answer is no to all of it. You're never really locked in. And maybe that's the problem, right? Maybe escape room is the wrong terminology, because you're never actually locked in. What you're trying to do is, escape the puzzle. For instance, a Pirate's Curse, one of our newer games. You're on the ship, the Soul. Now I just forgot the name of I was gonna say the Soul Crusher, but it's not the Soul. Anyways, you have till sundown to find the treasure, or you're cursed to spend eternity on the ship. So yes, you're trying to escape that, but it is absolutely imagination. So I think maybe some of that it resides in the psyche of a lot in society that think it is actually, you're going to be locked in and not let out.
Hmm. And I think there's also, when you walk through a theme park, like you said, you can see things, you can see the roller coaster, so you can see what it does, but escape rooms are all internal. So there's nothing to see in there. I'm curious if we can talk a little bit about sort of how the games are designed, just a little bit, without giving too many things away. But have you ever had a game that, or maybe the question is, how do you determine when a game is too difficult to solve versus just being, really difficult and fun to solve, if that makes sense?
No, it absolutely does. And there's a few interesting points here. Keep me on track, because once I go down one road, sometimes I forget to come back. We did a really good, so 85% of our customers book ahead of time online. So we're able to, and so, really, people, it's not Baskin Robbins. They're not tasting the ice cream before they decide which they want a scoop of. They're deciding based on the theme. So we can actually do quite a bit of things to study how those decisions are made. One of the most interesting tests we did is, we used to have our difficulty level on the games of, hey, this is a 7 out of 10, this is a 10 out of 10, what have you. And we did an A/B test. And when we removed the difficulty levels, conversion online went up. Like it was a 100% positive test. There was no gray area. It doesn't mean we don't still have people that fight us on, no, I want to have the difficulty level on the website. But so there is a little bit of, it almost doesn't matter what the actual difficulty level is. It's the perceived difficulty level. And that's sort of different for each person. You may play Batman, and it's really hard for you. And Josh might play Batman, and he's like, "Oh, that was too easy." So there's a little bit of, our game masters who are watching the game, who are following along on software, know where you should be. We have unlimited hints. It's really their responsibility, along with the game host, to identify what is the experience you want here. Enthusiasts may come to us and they say, no hints, no matter what. Even they might not get out of the first room. They don't want a hint. Most people are like, we want to have a good time. And our goal is to get 100% of the people to the final puzzle so that they get value for their dollar and for their hour of time. So we want to get them all there. And if that means we need a few more nudges or hints, we'll try to work with that. And that could look not giving you a hint you didn't ask for, but maybe it's you're 5 or 10 minutes behind where we think you should be, and you do ask for a hint. We might give you a stronger hint versus a little bit of a softer hint. That's sort of the how do we manage this? We're in the experience business. How do we manage the experience so that people don't get frustrated or they don't feel we've done something we shouldn't do? But when we design a new game, we will put it into the field. We'll prototype it, we'll run it, but then we'll go collect real data. We'll go and say, all right, let's look at escape rates. We recently launched Haunted House, and I think in our first couple of weeks of using live players, we were running like 60% escape rate. It was too hard. So it might not mean you take away a puzzle, you just might take away one portion of it. I can remember there was one, I shouldn't give away too much, but you had to recognize a pattern on the border of the picture. And we just realized it was just too hard. So we just need to make the border bigger and make it really obvious what it was. So we do have to do quite a bit of fine tuning on a new game. It is one of the luxuries of having a chain of venues, of having numerous venues, is that we have the ability to do that versus just build in place and you just have that one that you've got to try and figure out. But so yeah, we use real live guinea pigs.
I think that's so interesting what you said about having the level of difficulty and then removing that and seeing conversion go up. That definitely, I feel, would be like counterintuitive to what I think of my own personal, like even if it was like green, yellow, red, it's like, all right, perfect. Now I can aspire to something. I'll start at the beginning and I'll build my way up a little bit really fast.
Yeah, I suspected that was going to be the case. I did not think the results would be so 100%. Like I know our IT guy who was running the test, it sort of was like, in all my years of doing A/B testing, like online stuff, I've never seen this like certain of a result. I think it comes down to back to what we talked about. Why are people nervous about trying one? What it really said was all of them were, if we lowered the ratings, the bookings would go up. And I know that for a fact because we've seen that. If we arbitrarily take something that's a 9 and make it a 7, more people will book. They're worried about getting in there and not being able to do it and not knowing what to do. But I think most people are afraid of trying something for the first time. What you do find out once you do it is you're like, that was exhilarating. I loved that it was new and different and exciting. And that's why we get, once people try it, we know they're going to come and play again. But I do think part of it is that fear of it's going to be too difficult. And, unfortunately, the difficulty level, it really is personal. How many hints are you going to ask for? Like some people are like, they get upset. They're like, man, we had to use 2 hints. If you're like me, I'm like, I can't push the button enough times. Yeah, just like I've got ADHD. 30 seconds, I'm ready for the next puzzle. Like, let's go. So it depends on what you want, which is why taking those off allows us to maybe more customize the experience for that guest.
Burton, one of the things that just occurred to me as we were talking about the guests who haven't experienced it is there's also business operators who haven't experienced it, right? So I'm wondering if you have that same sort of hurdle when it comes to maybe new franchisees or new operators, that you're having to explain it to them just like you would to a guest.
Yeah, I think we're getting to a size we've created some legitimacy, I think, and not just us. There's the escape game is fantastic. There's a bunch of great brands out there. I think we're starting to establish some legitimacy as an industry. But let's be honest, we're at 95 locations and we're the largest escape room business in the world. So it's still nascent and very small. But 100%, most of our franchisees are enthusiasts who loved escape rooms and wanted to open a business, kind of started doing the math and the plans and realized, I don't think we can come up with this many games and do that. So let's go the franchise route. You are seeing additional consolidation in the industry. 2 years ago, I think there were 66 brands that had more than one location. Last year, there was 88. And I think you'll continue to see that because we talked about making a new game. You can build 6 on your own. I know for us, to share some numbers, I'll go back to Pirates Curse. That was last year we launched that. We probably spent $350,000 to $400,000 prototyping that game. And then to build it out is, typically in the $50,000 to $70,000 range, then more to install it. Really hard to do if you're an independent, to have that level of technology. We talk about the licensed IP, very hard to acquire the minimum, to afford the minimum guarantee or be able to acquire an IP like Scooby or something. That how are you going to get an ROI on that in 1 or 2 locations? So I do think, there's some phenomenal independents out there. I think those will always be the backbone of the industry. And we absolutely celebrate them because it's a great thing about this business. In the restaurant business, everyone's a competitor. In the escape room business, the only competitor is a bad escape room. People aren't playing it twice. So the only thing that's bad is someone tries it for the first time and it was a bad experience and they don't come back. But otherwise, if they go across the street to a great independent who's running a great game and they have a good experience, they're going to make their way to us. So we're hugely supportive of the entire industry, but we are seeing some additional consolidation.
I'm curious, and this might be kind of going back to what you mentioned of there's the enthusiast who's really like, don't give me any clues, like very intense about it, and then the group who they want to have a good time. Maybe it's the birthday, it's the bachelor party, it's the date night, whatever it might be. I'm thinking, and you can tell me if this comparison is on par or not, but being a spectator at a sporting event for a team that you're a big fan of. And when the team scores, you kind of get that dopamine kick and that level of satisfaction. And when your team wins, you have this higher level of satisfaction. But if your team loses, you're still walking out of the venue the exact same way, but you are a little bit more, subdued. Participating in an escape room, I kind of see the similarities that when you get the puzzle, you're like, oh, I got that. And then at the end, you've either escaped or you haven't. And I think that maybe the question I'm going towards is making sure you're seeing or you're delivering an equal experience, an equal level of satisfaction, regardless of the actual outcome of the game.
I think you're exactly right. I think it's a really interesting parallel to draw. One of the things I notice is that it's the shared experience. Like I feel like we have a relationship with our teams when we go to those sporting events. And yes, it feels like a more shared experience when we win. You kind of see, and we do, by the way, we're rated higher when people escape. They have a better time when they escape than when they don't. But there has to be the chance you can't escape, right? It's the same thing with sports, like way better when your team wins. But if you knew they were going to win, it would. Now, as a Dodgers fan, I already know my team's going to win. Just get my little plug in, 7-0. Did I know but if you don't know, if you knew your team was going to win, it would not be the same experience. So it's almost like one of those, It's just, it has to be there that there's the chance you're not going to get out. And we want that thrill at the end to be real, that, oh my God, we got out with a minute to spare, with 15 seconds to spare. But I do think, and you're a little bit, have a little bit of an inside look at our business, Josh. If you can do that exit hosting in a way that still engages that shared experience they just had, I don't think there's a really big dip in the satisfaction level. But I think you can't just let people, oh, look, we lost. You have to, from an exit host standpoint, there's got to be that, you were focus on you were so close, and here's that last little bit you didn't get on the last puzzle. I think sometimes once we do try to explain how the puzzles work at the end, so at least you don't go away without a resolved, again, I'm going to go back to doing the crossword. It's at least at the end, if I know the answer and I know what it was, even if I got it wrong, at least I know what the answer was, versus doing it on the airplane and I don't know if I got it right or didn't. It leaves you a little empty feeling. So we try to give them that answer. I do think that helps close the gap a little bit. It's almost like if when you leave the arena, yes, your team lost, but you somehow know they're going to win the next one. You're like, okay, well, as long as we win the next one, I'm okay.
Yeah. Well, there's that feeling of anticipation for the next one, potentially.
Right.
And you've got the challenge of the escape game that you're trying to achieve. And if you achieve it, great. You may have that hit of enthusiasm that you want to do it again. But then you've also got the challenge of, I didn't get it. There's a little competition in all of us. So now I want to try it again so I can see if I can do it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Yeah. I agree with that completely. That's certainly what we see.
Yeah. So I'm curious, thinking about kind of where escape rooms have been and where they've come from. What's next? What do we expect to see, coming down the road in the next 10 years or so, 5 years?
That phenomenal question. I wish I had the crystal ball to know that. Obviously, I probably have a better view of it than most. I think for us, I can speak to Escapology. We continue to work on innovation. And for us, innovation means how do we use technology in a way that lends itself to the escape room versus detracts from it? We want to continue to make things feel seamless, that they just happen. Technology is a great way to do that. But it doesn't take away from the storytelling, the theming. I would say in our last few games, we have leaned way heavier into the theming than we have the puzzles. And that's not for everyone. Some people are like, this is the way I want a puzzle to work. This is the challenge I want with that. We found, and I remember we had launched Batman in Northridge, California. And we were there, we were getting ready for a grand opening. And a single guy came in, and typically the minimum for a room is 2. And he wanted to play Batman. We were brand new, just opening. So I was like, well, yeah, fine. We'll take his money and let him play Batman. They stopped counting at about 32 hints that he had used. And it turned out he just wanted to really spend time in the room and check out the room and be in that space. And we really see, with Haunted House that just came out, we really leaned into, can we make this eerie and spooky and make it feel like a haunted house? The puzzles almost become secondary to that. It gives you some reason to be in there and you're solving something, but it's just being in that immersive environment that's really the piece. So I think you're going to see a higher priority on immersion, higher priority on stories that resonate. And so I'll tell you what I mean by that. I see 2 things out there. I see a lot of generic, and I see a lot of really specific kind of, one-off, clearly out of someone's crazy brain, and they're cool and they're exciting. I think it's figuring out the good blend between the 2. What are the themes that resonate that lots of people will try? Because again, they're not getting a taste before they have to buy it. So they've got to buy it based on what the title is. So it's got to be generic enough that it's like, oh, it's a pirate thing. It's a haunted house. I kind of get what it is. But then the story it tells has got to be unique enough that you come out going like, I didn't expect that. So I think what you're going to see is more surprises, I think there's some opportunities. I don't want to give away too much, but think about the feeling you have when you go see a magician, and you're like, how did like is there a secondary feeling you can leave someone with not only, oh, that was a fun game, we got out or we didn't get out, but I also don't get how that all worked. How was the last code my phone number? Like how did that work? Some things like that. So I think we're trying to think of how do we hit the guest in multiple ways, not just, okay, the adrenaline hit of I almost got out or I didn't get out, but how can we do that with the theming and with the environment?
And then the price of admission becomes just worth it just to physically be in the space and just to.
Yeah. And look, it's one of the reasons people have asked me a bunch, why do you guys have a big lobby and all of this? If you look at most of our competitors, the lobby is relatively, I've compared it. This is not appropriate, but it's a Jiffy Lube holding room. Like we really want that feeling of, oh, what am I in for? That anticipation to build the minute you step into the space. And so that's why we spend money and build the lobbies the way we do.
Well, Burton, this has been. Oh,
sorry, Matt. No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Burton, this has been a wonderful interview, and I don't want to escape it, but we are running a little low on time. So if people want to learn more about Escapology or get in touch with you directly, where would you send them?
Well, if they want to get in touch with me directly, 24/7, call Josh. He'll give you my my business hours number. No, escapology.com is the best place to learn more. We've got all the information about our games. We've got information about franchising. Yeah, I'm at Burton.Heiss at Escapology. So very, very easy to find and always excited to talk about the business. And sorry, I ate up so much time talking about escape rooms.
Well, I have one last question for you, and it's about escape rooms. And it's if you have a favorite room or game.
I'm asked this all the time. I think my favorite game to play is Pirate's Curse. My favorite game overall is Scooby because it's our most popular. So at the end of the day, I'm a businessman. I'm interested in what's working, but I love all of our games. Honestly, I love the whole concept of an escape room. I think it's a great use of time. I don't know about you guys, but around my house on the weekend, it's the constant, what's there to do? What are we going to do? Let's go do something. And, every time you play an escape room, you're generally playing something new. So you get that first time experience. And how often do you get the first time to ride a bike or the first time to do anything, if you think about it for that matter? And you get to do a first time every time. And I think that makes it very special.
Well, we have loved the fact that you talked about escape rooms as long as you did. We wish we could go a little bit longer, but Burton, thank you so much for your time and your insights today. And for everybody who's out there watching and listening, just remember, we are all Attraction Pros.